We should get started on research, girls, Uncle Jake said. I'm sure if we dig into the journals, we'll find some reference to this daughter of the water. Maybe it's a fish, Daphne said. I've had that thought for decades, and I've had a lot of time to think about what Spalding meant. I don't think it's a fish, but I think you're close, Granny Rhoda said. She cupped her hand around Daphne's ear and whispered something that made the girl's eyes grow as big as frisbees. No way! Daphne cried as she inserted her palm into her mouth and bit down hard. The sun was near the end of its decline by the time the girls and their uncle rowed out to the middle of the Hudson River in a tiny boat. Uncle Jake had been tight-lipped about his plan. When he reached the spot he was looking for, he dropped a bright orange anchor overboard. The little mermaid is the seventh daughter of Poseidon, the ruler of the sea, he said, as he fumbled in his pockets. Eventually, he took out a small fishing rod. On it was a lure and a hook. What kind of magic is that? Daphne asked. It's not magic. It's called a pocket fisherman. I bought it on the internet. Uncle Jake cast his line. Spalding knew what he was doing. Giving the blade to the little mermaid was a great way to hide it. Every time they mentioned the little mermaid's name, Daphne jumped up in excitement, nearly capsizing the boat several times. She had seen a movie about the character at a friend's house when she was 5 and spent entire weekends in the bathtub trying to grow fins. Of all the ever-afters in the town, Daphne wanted to meet the undersea princess the most. I bet we'll become best friends, Daphne said. She'd invite me over all the time. Sure, who wouldn't want to spend all of their free time at the bottom of the Hudson River, Sabrina said. Did you ever think that all of this is a wild goose chase? We can't exactly breathe underwater. Don't worry, Brina, Uncle Jake said as he reeled in his line slack. I know someone who can help us with that. It was several minutes before Sabrina noticed a tugging on the line. Looks like I've got a bite, Uncle Jake said, slowly and cautiously reeling his catch in. Suddenly he pulled back hard on the rod, and from the tension in it, it seemed as if he had hooked a big one. The fish was strong. A few times Sabrina was sure the fishing rod would be ripped out of Uncle Jake's hands and dragged in the water, but her uncle was strong, and soon he was pulling the fish on board. It was huge, probably weighing 20 pounds, with a white belly, gray skin, and a series of purple stripes on either side of its back. It flopped around on the bottom of the boat, smacking against the girls with its tail, and then it did something so shocking Sabrina nearly fell overboard. Jake Grim, the fish said in a gurgling voice, you dirty, filthy, no-good pain on my fin. I should have known when I saw that lure that was either you or your lousy brother. How are you doing, Anthony? Uncle Jake said as he set his rod into the boat. I wish this could have been avoided, Bud, but we need a bit of your special talents. You are talking fish, Daphne said. And you're a master of the obvious, Anthony said. Well, these are your kids, Jake. If this brood is the future of the Grimms, I suspect your family is in deep trouble. So, what do you want? We're going to see the little mermaid, and we need to be able to breathe underwater, Uncle Jake explained. Not a good idea, the fish warned. It can't be avoided, Uncle Jake replied. The mermaid's got something we need. She's in a foul mood lately. She's been particularly abusive to her staff. Half of them have been turned into fish sticks. If she kills you, don't come crying to me. I tried to warn you. Kills us? Daphne cried. That's crazy talk. The little mermaid would never kill someone. I know, I saw the movie. She's mean, Anthony said as he flopped around the boat. Mean, I tell you. Shut your mouth, Daphne cried. I don't believe a word you say. Your funeral, the fish gargled. All right, Jake, you know how this works. Make your wish. Wait a minute. You grant wishes? Sabrina interrupted. I'm a fish that talks and you're having trouble with me granting wishes? Why are we wishing to be able to breathe underwater? Why don't we just wish we had all the pieces of the roper blade? Why not avoid the headache? Sabrina asked her uncle. Sorry, kid, one wish per customer. I can't grant multi-part wishes, the fish said. Well then, I wish I had the little mermaid's part of the vocal blade, Sabrina said. Just then, a seaweed-covered piece of metal materialized in Sabrina's hands. She picked out the slimy lance and smiled. Its jagged end would fit perfectly with the other piece of the sword. All right, Jake, the fish said. I did my part. Now put me back in the water. I really appreciate your help, Uncle Jake said as he scooped the fish up and released him into the river. Anthony drifted back up to the surface and squirted water into Uncle Jake's face. Next time, put a worm on that hook. If I'm going to be put out, the least you could do is feed me. The fish dove under the waves and was gone while the family eyed their treasure with awe. That was easy enough, Sabrina said. Magic makes everything easier, Uncle Jake said. Daphne shrugged. Granny says there's always a price for using magic. Your grandmother just likes to do things the hard way, Uncle Jake said. Suddenly, there was mighty splash, and a figure sprang out of the water. He was strong, with a barrel chest and big arms. His skin was green-tinged, and he had kelp in his hair. He yanked an orange starfish from a belt around his waist and smacked it onto the top of Daphne's head. He snatched her in his arms and dragged her under the water. Daphne! Sabrina cried as she searched the surface for her sister. Sabrina and Uncle Jake desperately called out for a little girl, but there was no reply. Had her sister just been drowned before her eyes? Seconds later, there was another splash on the other side of the boat. This time, Sabrina got a better look at what kind of man it was. She noticed to her shock that he had a fish tail instead of legs. He slapped another starfish onto Uncle Jake's head, and before Sabrina could put up a fight, her uncle was dragged overboard as well. Sabrina was all alone. She stuffed the sword piece into one coat pocket, and out of another she took the wand of Merlin. She studied the water, examining every ripple and preparing for an attack. When she heard the splash behind her, she spun around, causing the little boat to dip and roll. She lost her balance, and the wand fell from her hand and rolled to the bottom of the boat. Before Sabrina could scamper down to retrieve it, the merman sprang into the boat, nearly capsizing it. He removed a scroll from a little bag on his belt and unfolded it, then cleared his throat and began to read. By the order of Our Lady the Princess, I do hereby place you and your co-conspirators under arrest for act of thievery, the merman declared. You don't understand, Sabrina argued, but the merman ignored her. He rolled up his scroll and tucked it back into his bag. Then he slapped an orange starfish onto the top of Sabrina's head. The starfish's 5 arms clamped down on her skull, acting like suction cups, and suddenly an odd sensation came over her. She literally felt like a fish out of water. She couldn't breathe. Chapter 8. What have you done to me? Sabrina gasped, desperate for air. Silence, you filthy, thieving topsider, the merman barked as he snatched a piece of the vocal blade from her pocket. He tucked it under his belt and grabbed her roughly by the arm. Before Sabrina could struggle, he leaped out of the boat and into the frigid water, taking her with him. He swam deeper and deeper, with Sabrina trapped in his strong grasp. She fought back viciously, punching and kicking her captor, but it didn't seem to faze the merman at all. Soon, her lungs were burning for oxygen. Her mouth instinctively opened and she inhaled deeply. Icy crystals raced down her throat. A curious heaviness filled her body, and she felt as if water were pouring into her fingers and toes. She closed her eyes, preparing to die, but after several minutes, something dawned on her. She could breathe. It must be the starfish, she realized. Where are you taking me? Sabrina demanded as a wave of bubbles escaped her mouth. She was surprised to find her voice sounded as normal as it did in air. The merman said nothing, only pointed to the rapidly approaching river floor when an incredible sight came into view. Nestled on the rocky bottom of the Hudson River was a city. It had skyscrapers, apartment buildings, and hundreds of mermen and mermaids rushing here and there in the neatly planned grid of streets. From high above, the city was a fantastically beautiful dream of green and aquamarine. Whereas the merman dragged her closer and closer, the city's secret began to reveal itself. Everything was made out of trash. Entire buildings were made from discarded car tires and license plates. The sidewalks were paved from old bottle caps and the heels of shoes. Homes were constructed from old clothes, wagon wheels, flip-flops, garden tools, computers, antique telephones, grocery carts, beach chairs, cans, bottles, and thousands of tennis balls, footballs, and frisbees, all stacked with expert care. The merman pulled Sabrina through the city gates and along a street made of crushed toasters and cast iron skillets. "Where do you get all this stuff?" Sabrina said. The merman scowled and pointed toward the surface. She looked up, then down again at all the junk. No wonder her captor had so much contempt for her. Every nook and cranny of the odd city owed its existence to 200 years of junk that people like herself had dumped into the river. Human beings were disgusting. He turned down one alley and then another. They passed dozens of shops carved out of sunken sailboats. Some still had their names painted on the side. Mermaid and mermaid shop owners stood on the street, calling out to passers-by, trying to get them to buy old pop bottles and bicycle wheels. A mermother pushed an infant baby along the street in an old stroller. Soon, Sabrina and the merman reached an enormous palace, nearly 5 stories high. From above, Sabrina had thought it was the most beautiful place she had ever seen, but now that she was in front of it, she realized it was made of the same junk as the rest of the underwater town. A flight of stairs, which were actually old car bumpers, led to a large door which was guarded by a merman holding a dented trumpet in one hand and a trident in the other. "I have the last at the top," sighed the prisoners, her captor said. The merman nodded. "You may pass." He swam over and pushed the door open, allowing them to enter a great seaweed-covered hallway. They continued through another doorway, this one unguarded, and down a flight of steps. At the bottom, Sabrina saw several heavy wooden doors with metal bars in their windows. The merman took a set of keys from his belt, opened up the closet door, and shoved Sabrina inside. Daphne and Uncle Jake sat on a bench in the corner of the room. Daphne looked at her disapprovingly, while Uncle Jake gave her a pitiful smile. "You will be held here in the dungeon until Her Highness seeks your presence," the merman barked. "Then you will be given 5 minutes to plead your innocence or guilt. Shortly after, you will be executed and your body fed to the lake's parasites and bottom feeders." "What if we found innocent?" Sabrina said. "No one is found innocent," the merman said. He exited the room, slammed the heavy metal door, and locked it tight. Sabrina turned back to her family. I dropped the wire into the boat." "It doesn't matter anyway," Uncle Jake said. "It won't work underwater." "If I'm fed to bottom feeders, I will never forgive you," Daphne said. "You had to use magic. Granny said there was always a price, but you wouldn't listen. What are we going to do now?" "I don't know. We're in big trouble," Uncle Jake said. Sabrina and Daphne looked at each other. They didn't have to say what they were thinking. In the short time they had known their uncle, he had been Mr. Confidence. If he was giving up already, then the situation was really bad. "You don't know?" Sabrina said. "You've got an overcoat filled with magic stuff. Start searching your pockets." "I doubt anything will work. Magic doesn't like getting wet," Uncle Jake said. "We don't need any of your magic," Daphne said. "I'll do all the talking. I'll tell the princess why we need her part of the sword. She's the little mermaid. She's really cool and nice, and she'll totally understand." "Daphne, this isn't the Little Mermaid from the movies," Uncle Jake explained. In that movie, she fell in love with the prince and was happy, but in the real story, the one Hans Christian Andersen documented, the princess gave up her entire life to be with her prince, and he abandoned her for another woman. He rode off and completely forgot about her. She's never really gotten over it, and is still a little resentful toward humans. Actually, that's an understatement. That seems to be the end of this video. I'll send more later. Goodbye.